I'd like to welcome everyone to the fifth webinar series for Emotional Readiness for Change. Succession Matching has been working with Dave Sinclair for a number of years now. A lot of people don't think about the next step in their retirement plan, which is really unfortunate because when you think about it, you've run your business for a number of years and it's almost like your baby. One thing that I found very interested in our Get Started Business and Farm Transition Survey is less than 50% of people knew what they were going to do in the next stage of their retirement. And this is a really key question. Dave will get into why this is so important, and we're just really fortunate to have him here today. So a couple of housekeeping items. The webinar should be about 25 minutes, and then there'll be about 5 minutes for questions at the end. And then Dave will also have his contact information for anyone that would like to follow up and have a little bit more one-on-one with him. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to you, Dave.
Hey, thanks, Allison. Can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me all right, Allison?
Yes, very well on this end. Thanks.
Oh, very good. Quite often I'll get talking and realize I haven't unmuted myself. So we've covered the first key step. So we're on our way. So welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join us this morning. Thank you, Allison, for putting on these series of valuable seminars. Like you mentioned, it's really a shame that people don't take more time to look at the tactical as well as the personal side of transition planning. And I commend you all for being here today and taking some time to tease into this information that I'll prove more than valuable for yourself and for your business moving forward. So getting into this, I just want to, I got a little problem here. There we go. There we go. Talking about transitioning planning, you know, a transition out of your business from one state to another, transition will inevitably happen. Transition faces us in everything that we really have in our lives, whether it's our businesses, whether it's our personal lives, whether it's our health. Really, the question is, will you be ready for transition when it happens? And that's what we're really talking about, whether it's a business transition or the personal transition side of it, will you be ready for it? So I just thought I'd start off with a little bit of information about who I am. I'm a guy who loves the outdoors, love my family. Here's some pictures of my lovely nieces. This is a picture of my wife and I on the West Coast Trail a couple years ago. So again, just building on that outdoor theme. Another picture of my lovely wife, my lovely dogs. I love my dogs. There's a picture of me. That's probably the worst picture on the page, but that's okay. That's me. And if you think about it, why am I telling you this? Well, really, someone asked me the other day, they said, Dave, how's it going? And the only way I can answer that to them is, you know, it's going great. I am living my ideal life, my ideal definition. And there's something important there, my definition of the ideal life. But it wasn't always this way. You know, I was the guy who had his head down on my desk, working 80 hours a week, chasing the fancy cars, the lavish vacations, the pursuit of more and more and more. There was never enough money that could satisfy what I was looking for. But really, I didn't have those other things from the first slide. I didn't have any balance in my life. I didn't like where this was headed. I didn't like the feeling that I was going to be this guy sitting behind my desk one day. And really, if this is the best you can do with your life, that's pretty sad. I didn't want on my tombstone for it to say, rest in peace. I worked too hard in the business. I wanted that really final words to be a little bit more than that. What I discovered through this entire journey, though, was working in the business 24/7, not knowing how to do it any different, not knowing who could help, equaled the business running me and zero balance. I'm not sure if anyone else can resonate with that, but I could sure resonate with that when I was in the business. And my business, I had a couple businesses before I got into this. The one that I was primarily responsible for, I was a part owner in a small multinational. I had 65 people working for me. It was a pretty good business, very, very profitable. I mean, I was making lots of money at it, but needed to take that step back to figure out how could I get this business really running at a point where I didn't have to be there anymore. So what did I do? I left my business. I really struggled, and it's kind of funny, a little story here. The day after I left my business, you know, all of a sudden you don't have this email address. Well, that was really tough. I struggled with that. If I wasn't this email address in my business, if I wasn't this persona that I had worked so hard at, who was I? I really struggled with this. I decided I needed a new plan. I headed back to school. I took my MBA, followed that up with a certification in exit planning, and followed that up with some other education, which we're going to get into here in a minute. And I decided to start a new business. That's where Business Transitions Plus was born. And ultimately now I work with others to help them prepare for transition of their business and their personal lives moving forward. Through this whole process of my education, I mean, like I say, I started with the MBA. In the MBA, I really focused on what creates more value in one business compared to another at the eventual time of sale. I followed that up with a certification in exit planning. So I'm a certified exit planning professional too as well. And that really focused on more the tactical side of transitioning out of a business, you know, your taxable situation, your maybe your succession plan for who's going to take over, things like that. And you could say with the MBA and the certification in exit planning, I was really set up very well to be helping businesses out from an exit planning point of view. And I was, but I found there was something missing. I found when I was working with these business owners, there was still something really holding them back from truly committing to putting an exit plan in place. I did a bit of searching and I found this gentleman. His name is Jack Beauregard. He's out of Boston. And really what Jack's philosophy is and what Jack mentored me in and trained me in was the soft side of exit planning. You know, not just finding a new owner for your business, but also figuring out what is this life outside of business that you're working so hard to get. And I'm not sure if that resonates with anybody, but it sure resonated with me and my path. Not knowing who I was outside the business caused a lot of grief when I finally left, and even when I was in the business. And what I mean by that is, as I'm in the business and I'm really identified with being this person who everyone relies on, so much of my identity was tied into that I was actually, let's use the word, afraid to let go of the reins somewhat, to let others help me run the business. So what I mean by that is, by taking the time to figure out who we really are, we actually untap the hidden resources within our companies, which allow us then to extricate ourselves from the business and the business to become more self-reliant, reliant beyond ourselves. And if you're thinking about your business from a value creation standpoint, as soon as you can do that and you can really tap into the management team and the others that are there to help you run the business and put a plan in place. Maybe it's a family farm and it's starting to have conversations with your daughter or your son about what it's going to look like when you start transitioning away from the farm, and having those deeper conversations and getting them more involved with, well, what are we going to plant next year? How are we going to do this? Imagine what can happen then. You actually tap into this deeper resource, this more intangible resource of the people within your company, which allow you to extricate yourself from the business, which actually makes your business much more valuable to an outside investor. So Jack has a couple books. The first one is Finding Your New Owner for Your Business for Your Life, as well as 7 Principles for Living with Authenticity. And this is really teases into the deeper issues behind why sometimes we're a little bit leery about moving forward. So we're going to tease into these a little bit deeper today. This is just a little quick graphic about what I really do. If you take a look at the 2 circles, you've got 2 things. You have your business and then you have your life outside of business. And really what I help people do is, number one, we take a look at their life and we think about, what do I want my life to be like? We start putting a plan in place for this exciting new life. And then this untaps the other side of the circle by looking at your business and thinking, how is my business holding me back from living this life? As well as, how am I holding my business back? And that gets back to that slide just previous and what we talked about, where if you're really uncomfortable of letting go of the reins, you might actually be holding your business back. Put a plan in place to improve the business and have it to be able to run without you. Put this plan in action, and ultimately that'll free up some time so you can start practicing your ideal life sooner than later. And that's where the title of the presentation comes in. Why wait for the future? Why not take some time right now to start thinking about what this ideal life is you'd like to lead, and figure out how to get your business situated a little bit more to start letting you lead that life. So an overview of the discussion, we'll discuss a bit of background information, which we did a little bit, discuss the entire integrative transition planning process, discuss personal transition planning a bit deeper, go through a few planning questions, and hopefully have some time for questions at the end. I'm going to go through this all pretty fast, but I can make this available to people after. And if you want to reach out, touch base with me, great. Plus, there's all kinds of free resources on my website. So a bit more background around the actual situation of transition planning. 80% of overall wealth of business owners is typically tied up in the business. Very few people have a plan in place, which I think everybody's kind of seen these statistics before. Yet, a pile of people are looking, about 70% of people are looking at exiting their business in the next 10 years, 85% of which are leaving for retirement reasons. And if you think about it, if there's that many people looking at leaving their business for retirement reasons, but all their wealth is tied up in the business and they haven't did any planning, do you see any red flags there? So why is this so important? Well, this huge transfer of wealth moving towards retirement and trying to figure out, well, what the heck am I going to do, leaves a lot of questions to be answered. So why is it important for these owners to plan? Well, number one, create more value for your business when you sell. A very well-ran business is going to attract a higher multiple of EBITDA. A better ran business is going to have a higher level of EBITDA, which is basically a fancy way to say profit. Make your business stand out when they sell. With that many businesses looking to be on the marketplace, what are you going to do to make your business stand out? Allow for smoother operations today. I often say transition planning, utilizing transition planning fundamentals is a great way to put together a strategic plan for your business. And what's a strategic plan? Well, a strategic plan is really your business plan made come to life. It's the business plan you took so long to do to get the financing for your business. Why not take that information and actually implement it now? And that's where a strategic plan comes in. It takes a while to basically develop this plan. So again, the sooner the better. And if you start taking it and look at things such as taxable implications, there's some things you have to do well in advance to make sure you can take advantage of that. But again, with the personal side, the longer you take to transition away from your business, let's say, and move into a better second-tier management structure, the more time you'll have to practice your life after business before you get there. And we'll tease into that a bit more here. Sorry, my computer froze up. There we go. Ensure you have a plan for after you leave the business, and that's really the personal side. And create an ideal plan for your business, your ideal life after business. And this will act as a catalyst for change. And what I mean by this is by taking the time to think about what this ideal life is that you want to move on to, it's going to get you a little bit more excited about getting there, which in turn will allow you to start doing the work in the business that you need to do. And I said work in the business, really it's the working on the business thing that we need to talk about, those higher end things so the business can work more easily without you. So let's pull it all together. You know, there's really no one size fits all equation. This is all very much custom. And people often ask me, they say, well, Dave, what's the map from A to Z? And I say, well, it's complicated. It depends. There's really no one size fits all equation. There's some basics, but again, no one size fits all. We take a look at the head, heart, business, and wallet issues that you face. And you can think about it like a three-legged stool. There's the business preparation side. That's getting your business ready so it can be transitioned. The financial preparation side, that's really answering the questions, how much money do I need to move on to this next stage? And then we really focus more in on the personal transition preparation. Are you ready for this next stage? What's it going to look like for you? So what can an integrative approach help the owner achieve? Well, really, again, kind of looking at what we talked about here, increase value of the business, help you figure out who the best buyer is for your business. It's interesting when you get into selling a business, especially if you've got a bigger one in the M&A field, mergers and acquisitions field, typically someone that's interested in your business, you might not even be able to identify the reasons why they're interested in your business. They might be looking at some kind of strategic standpoint rather than what you see as it being value, maybe your customer list. So it's always good to take some time to figure out what the best buyer is. Exit on your own terms. You know, by taking the time to plan, you'll be able to exit on your own terms, what's important to you. Be able to move on to this new life with identity and purpose. Identity and purpose outside the business. I mean, how many of us get all of our identity and purpose from the business? I know I sure did. And maximum value for when you sell. What can an integrative approach help the owner that's looking at moving on avoid experiencing? Well, sellers' succession remorse, moving on and thinking, why did I do that? You know, taking the time to really figure out what the best option is helps you feel really secure about your decision at the end. Retirement remorse or a rut. And these are the people that retire and really have nothing to do. They end up mowing the grass 7 days a week. Well, it doesn't sound like a good idea for me. Gray divorce, it's a rising statistic, unfortunately, in the US, where the CEO of the household finally meets the CEO of the business. They come home, the CEO of the business decides, well, I know how to run this household better. It leads to a lot of friction, you know. So need to figure out, as part of this personal transition planning process, how do we get on the same sheet of music between the spouses? And then PTSD, the other one, post-transaction stress disorder. And this is where you might have only had one plan in place. I'm going to golf 7 days a week. Well, what happens when that falls through? What are you going to do? Need to really think things through so we don't face these things. So the 4 components to the process is, number 1, to create your personal transition plan, create your business transition plan, implement your business transition plan, and move on to your new life. When we take a look at this, the integrative transition planning process follows these 4 steps. So number 1 is defining the owner objectives. These are the basic questions, the who, when, how much, what next questions from the business transition plan. And this is where it's nice to have a quarterback involved here, or a coach or a transition advisor, to really help keep everybody aligned. And people at this point say, well, Dave, that's going to cost me some money. Well, it's going to cost you some money up front to do, but the amount of money it'll save you on the back end is pretty phenomenal. What I mean by that is, if you take a look at it, if you don't have a plan in place, well, your accountant might go one way, your estate planner might go another way, your lawyer might go another way, and just imagine all those fees stacking up and those bills going out on a monthly basis. Step 2, what we're going to talk here about a little bit more, personal planning. Who are you if you're not in the business? What does this next stage of life look like? Making it better, that's where you might have to take a look at, what improvements do I have to make in the business to create extra value here, or even your personal life. Step 4, make it happen. That's the actual transaction. That's when you're going to be working with your accountant, or maybe a business broker, or an M&A banker, whatever it is. And step 5, make it last. That's where we're working with the financial planner to make sure whatever you do get out of the sale of your business is there to take care of this next stage of your life. So what should this plan really provide you? Well, on the left here, we've got a piece of pie where it shows a well laid out and executed plan with the proper team in place. And here the blue is the owner's proceeds and satisfaction, their expenses, their taxes, and a little chunk of pie for the advisory team that helps them out. Let's compare that with an owner that really doesn't do a whole bunch of planning. Their proceeds are much smaller, their expenses are much higher, taxes are much higher. So I would just ask you, which pie would you rather have? It pays to plan. Why the lack of planning? A lot of people underestimate the importance, think it's too early to start, and may not be thinking of the business as something that can sell. Limited resources, we only have so much time. We don't know where to start. It's overwhelming. And again, that's where a transition advisor or a quarterback can step in and help you out. Maybe a lack of qualified successors, maybe financing worries. How can I get this money out of there? How am I going to basically structure this so that the successor can pay me out? But there's a deeper issue. What's next is a huge question for business owners. We're facing the fear of an unknown future, facing the fear of loss of identity, loss of meaning, and really no vision for what the next stage of their life can be like. Exiting often feels like you're jumping off a cliff or entering a black hole. And people just don't want to think about it. They use the R&D method, which is repress and deny. I'm never going to leave this business. It's never going to happen to me. I'm going to be here till the day I die. And is that the way you want to be remembered? Is that the best you can do with your legacy of being in business? I would challenge you and say, no, it can be much better than this. The consequences of using this R&D method and dying at your desk is the business can die with you. An unprepared business, where a business owner is really that key driving force, when they face a situation like this where the owner passes unexpectedly, the devaluation in that business and a fire sale situation is very significant. Employees can lose their jobs. The community can suffer that you have the business in. Your family may experience financial duress. Very serious things. Again, this is just to reinforce why it's so important to figure out what is the best thing I can do moving forward. And it doesn't have to be a 0 or 1. People think, well, it's either leaving the business, Dave, or not leaving the business. Again, it comes down to people ask me, what can I do? Well, you can do almost anything you want. Do you want to have partial ownership in it? Do you want to be on the board of directors? Do you want to have 50%, 70%? What do you want to do? The sky's the limit. Let's figure out what works for you. It doesn't have to be all at once either. It can be a slow transition. One of the things we need to talk about, though, is go from the word exit planning, which a lot of people know it as, to transition planning. And an exit plan, if you think about that, think you're sitting on an airplane right now. Imagine that. And all of a sudden, bang, something happens, and from above you drops down the little mask you put over your face. And now you've got to actually use these exit doors. How appealing is that? How appealing is an exit? It has that feeling of finality, of an emergency, where a transition is more a move from one state of being to another. And that's what we're looking at, transitioning from where you are right now and the ownership of your company is right now to somewhere else. And when you think about it, there's different paths we can take. We can take the path on the left, which is maybe, who knows where I'm going. We can take this little rougher path on the right. Again, doesn't look very good. Or we can take a path to a bright, shiny new future. And by knowing what you're going to do in this next stage of life, that's what we're trying to do, is prepare you for that. And why is that important? Well, when you think about it, in the past, when people maybe retired at 65, how long did you have ahead of you? Now, with advances in the medical field, living to 85 very healthily is not unreasonable at all. So what are you going to do if you say retire at 65 and are going to basically be active now until 85? What are you going to do for those 20 years? That's a lot of days to wake up and think about, what am I going to do this morning? Transitioning your business really looks like this. It's from owning your business to doing something new in your life. And an unsuccessful way of doing it is to leave without planning, facing exit decision remorse, and having a boring and meaningless life. That doesn't sound very appealing. Let's look at a successful transition where we put a transition strategy in place, implement it, and ultimately move on to this exciting and fulfilling new life. And when we think about transition, it's often we think that it starts with something, but a business transition is typically, it's this endpoint that we start with and questioning what it is to move to the beginning. This, of course, creates a lot of anxiety in us. When we look at it, we take a look at the present. Where are you at right now? The future, where do you want to be? And we put a plan in place that allows you to bridge that gap and get to where you want to be. So what can personal transition planning do for you? It can act as a personal compass, which allows you to achieve clarity of what you're going to move on to in this next stage of your life, explore new opportunities, find new meaning in your life, and discover a new sense of purpose, a sense of purpose beyond this work life that we've become so attached to. So we take the time when we're putting together a personal transition plan to acknowledge your concerns, really take the time to do that, consider the different options that are ahead, brainstorm with like-minded people that have been through this, and put together a personalized plan that works for you. And again, this really is an important thing to do. It works for you. What's your definition of success? What's your definition of transition? We help you figure that out and put it down on paper so it fits for you. Business owners really need to ask themselves, have I planned for the future after business? Am I willing to take some time to prepare? What does this next chapter look like? And why wouldn't you want to create a plan for this? I mean, we create a plan for our business, marketing plans, sales plans, all this stuff. Well, why are you doing that? Well, I'm doing it to get more money, I often hear. Well, why? Well, I want to be able to sit on the beach one day. Okay, okay. So that's what you really want. You want to be able to sit on the beach. Well, let's reverse engineer that and figure out what that really means. Keep that in mind to start with so that you don't get to the point where you're 75 years old, still in the business, and you can't travel now. Let's figure out how you get onto that beach maybe a little bit faster. So we take a look again at your life today, put the personal transition planning in place, and help you move on to your new life of meaning and purpose. We take a look at a whole bunch of different areas, and this is just a sample life wheel. Things like physical health, recreational, creative activity, social connections, income producing work. How do all these different pieces of the pie fit into your ideal situation moving forward? So what does this look like in practice? Let's use a sample client, and this is kind of an amalgamation of different clients I've worked with, but let's call this person Perry. And Perry is a guy that he's in the business right now, and really it's his way or the highway, and he kind of is the business. So he has an advertising business that he wants to sell. He actually comes to me, this is partially a true story, comes to me and he wants to sell in 6 months. Well, we had to take quite a step back from that, because getting a business that is not prepared for sale, ready to sell in 6 months is sometimes it's realistic, but depends on what your objectives are. If you want to get a bunch of money out of it, it may not be necessarily realistic. So we start off with some personal questions. What's your personal vision of what your ideal should look like? When we have Perry, I ask him this question, he jots down an idea for each one of these things. Why'd you get in business in the first place? Perry? Well, he wanted to, his idea of his ideal life is he wants to be eating better. He wants to live healthy. He wants to spend time with his grandkids. He wants to be a motivational speaker, and he wants to really have the freedom to do all this stuff. So we start connecting him with that vision of his ideal future moving forward. Then we dig a little bit deeper. We talk about things like, what does being in business provide you other than income? What will the business do if the business is not there to provide this for you? And for Perry, well, the business gives him somewhere to go. It gives him status in the community. He likes that feeling. It gives him a meaning, a sense of purpose. So we start taking a look at the other aspects of his life and start figuring out, well, how are we going to replace those if the business isn't there to supply them for you anymore? I ask him the question, what plans do you have in place for how you'll live your life once you leave the business? How will you fill your days in a meaningful way once you leave the business? Perry? Well, he realizes he doesn't have a lot of answers here. He's a little concerned. So again, we tease into it a little bit more and we answer these questions. We take some time. We ask him questions like this: on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being fully satisfied, how would you rate the quality of your life right now in these different areas? Perry starts going through these questions and he takes a step back and realizes, you know what? If I make a few changes right now in my physical health, it's going to make everything else kind of come into play, and starts taking a look at these different things, and things start coming alive for them. So part of the planning process is not just coming up with a plan, but also start coming up with executables and action steps that you can take to move this forward. And when we take a look at how does running the business right now interfere with you living your ideal life? How much money do you need from the business to live this ideal life? And Perry, well, right now the business interferes with pretty much anything else he wants to do because he's there 80 hours a week. He's got a lot of questions. So Perry, how does it turn out? He took the time to go through the process. He came up with a plan. This helped him set a North Star for him to aim for as he got his business better prepared and running more smoothly without him. Things are going better now in the business, allowing him to live a more balanced life right now. And the business is becoming more sellable. So what are some key outcomes of this personal transition planning process? You end up with a plan for the future, more connection, enjoy life and new experiences. It acts as a catalyst to make the needed business changes, gives you a stronger sense of purpose outside of the business. And this being said, that kind of wraps up my short presentation here today. I kind of rushed there a little bit at the end to finish on time, but I hope you got some value out of it, and I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
As always, a great presentation, Dave. One question I have for you, what's your personal objective? What's your vision for your own business?
Yeah, so a vision for my business is it's a great question. I'm working on compiling a whole bunch of information, and my transition plan is about a 10-year plan right now. I plan on taking my PhD next, but I want to do that in a retirement phase, semi-retirement phase, let's say. So
Wow,
in 10
that's
years,
really
I
cool.
want to be living on the ocean, taking my PhD, and things are moving in that direction right now while still working. I don't see work as being something that'll go away from me. I just absolutely love helping people with this information and helping people move forward. And I just want to contribute to this field as much as possible.
Very cool. Well, you must have done a really good job on the presentation because I don't see any questions in the chat box. If there are any questions for Dave, his information will be on the page available for any registered participants that may be watching online. But we just wanted to say thank you very much, Dave, and thanks to everyone that attended today.
Thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a great day. And feel free to reach out to me, dsinclair@btplus.ca. My website is dsinclair at business transitions plus at I'm going to start that again, businesstransitionsplus.ca, dsinclair@btplus.ca, or give me a call, 780-918-1159. I love talking about this stuff. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Allison, and hope you all have a great day. It's snowing out here, so I might have to get out there and walk my dogs in the snow.
Well, that sounds good. So thank you very much for your contact information and have a good day.